How are you all? Good, good, good. My name is Bob Pura. Truly my privilege to be the president here at Greenfield Community College. I want to thank all of you very much for making the time this afternoon to come together here at GCC for this legislative luncheon, but really it is yet again another demonstration of the way in which Western Massachusetts comes together. This collaborative effort is, in fact, a statement about how well Western Mass works together. Our schools and colleges, our regional employment boards, human service providers, the business community, the healthcare systems, side by side with our elected leaders, understand the word collaboration in ways that most regions only talk about it. On behalf of our students, faculty, and staff, I want to welcome you all to Greenfield Community College. This past summer, we moved into this wonderful building. Not long ago, as most all of you know, there were 44 steps leading into our front door. We are so pleased to have been able to remove those steps and the physical and the emotional barriers that they presented to all. This building is about access, light, respect for the environment, student-centered adjacencies, and it is about community. But as you all know so well, colleges are not about buildings, they are about people. We are excited about the fact that GCC now has a first-rate learning environment so reflective of the quality of the relationships that have long been at the core of this college and its service to this community. Yes, we are celebrating our 50th, and I believe at each of your plates is a wonderful little dessert, our 50th chocolate. To celebrate 50 years of access and excellence is to celebrate democracy and the egalitarian values in which our nation has been built upon. For 50 years, this college and this community together have kept the doors of education open for all who aspire for a better life for themselves and their families. In so doing, this college and this community have together been making good on the promise of America. Now that is something to celebrate, but that is the same story that exists out in the Berkshires, in Hampden and Hampshire counties, and that happens in each of our communities because of all of you, the people in this room. You know, sure. Centralizing the community college system is not a good idea. It will not help us do a better job at meeting the needs of our local communities. In fact, that level of bureaucracy is not only costly, but it in fact creates a harness to creativity and will slow down our response time to the very communities that we share in goals with this governor and this proposal. It is our job to work closely with the communities that we serve. And a bridge to that community, liaison to that community, is not only the work that goes on every day with many within the community, but it is the role and responsibility of our Board of Trustees. Each of the colleges represented in this room today, each of the colleges around this Commonwealth have board members who are appointed by governors, and as a result, they are picked because of their leadership within the communities that we serve. They are the business leaders, healthcare leaders. They bring the voice of the community to the decision-making of the colleges within the community. It is their neighbors, their employees, and many times their family members that walk through our doors as students. Who better to identify the needs of the community, who better to lead colleges in meeting those needs than our Board of Trustees. To speak on behalf of all of those boards, Hector Toledo. Hector is the chair of the board at Springfield Technical Community College. Hector?
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. I apologize for being a little late. I wanted to start off by giving you a little background on myself. As some of you might know, my connection to SDCC goes back to the mid to late 80s when I was a student there, back when I was a much younger man and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. SDCC was a place that myself and my friends went to in hopes that we could figure out a way to make something of ourselves. Frankly, it seemed to be the only place that my friends and I not only were welcomed, but we were made to feel like we belonged. It's also the very same place where I bumped into an old friend of mine from high school, the same friend that I just was blessed enough to celebrate my 20th wedding anniversary with last year. Thank you. I share this with you so that you might get a sense of how important SDCC has been to me and my family, so that you can get a sense of the impact that the college and its staff had on us, and as well as our friends. In that you get a sense of how honored I was at being asked to join the Board of Trustees, and not join the Board of Trustees, but eventually chair it as a resident of Springfield, as an employee of a Springfield corporation, as is my wife. We're huge fans of the area and what it has to, the promise that it holds for all of us. With that said, I have been asked to talk briefly with you about the trustees' perspective on Governor Patrick's legislation on community colleges as contained in his proposed fiscal year 2013 budget, now before the state legislature. Trustees from all 15 colleges met about 2 weeks ago to consider our position. As a group, we applauded the recognition and importance given to community colleges, and we appreciated the proposal to increase of $10 million to the overall budgeting of community colleges. However, we were opposed to change in governance that would remove power and authority from local boards, reducing the ability of local community colleges to lead our institutions. Specifically, Section 30, an outside section of the governor's budget, would move to the State Board of Higher Education the power to A, distribute all state funds among the 15 community colleges, B, establish guidelines for college fees, and finally to hire, fire, and set conditions of employment for the college chief executives. Additionally, the governor's budget would add funds to the Board of Higher Education to hire additional staff to carry out these new mandates. These changes raise a few important questions. First of all, is it better for controlled community colleges to be vested in local boards or in a board located in Boston? Local boards know students, businesses that the college serves. Local board members live and work near the college. Each local board focuses on the needs and goals of that specific college that they work with. We've checked into the membership of the Board of Higher Education. Out of its existing 11 members, only one of them is from Western Mass. Secondly, in this era of reduced state support for public colleges and universities, will consolidating authority in Boston really save us money? I think the answer to this question is clear. Centralizing authority requires additional staff, and it slows down the ability of local colleges to respond quickly to local needs. Our community colleges have demonstrated a great deal of initiative and entrepreneurship during this economic downturn. They have secured new grant money from public and private sources, carried out building upgrades and renovation projects, many without any state funds, increased level of federal and private financial aid, and sustained academic programs. Our colleges are in good financial shape with excellent audit reports that are done, by the way, yearly by private firms. Why reorganize a model that is obviously working so well? And finally, how will Western Massachusetts fare under a central board located in Boston? The record is not encouraging. Over the last decade, funds for roads and bridge repairs in Western Massachusetts have been starved because of the infamous Big Dig. Reimbursement for local government and aid for the homeless is less in Western Mass than it is in the greater Boston area. Our communities are the farthest from Boston, with a population of only 11% of the state. While our local legislators do an excellent job of representing our interests, their influence will be greatly reduced if authority for community colleges is centralized in the Boston area. So I ask of you to take the time to think about the entire impact the governor's proposed changes will have not only on the structure of our boards and the control of our finances, but on the many students with stories very similar to my own. Thank you for your time.
Where I grew up, if you're low on fuel, you don't buy a new car. You don't change the bus driver if the bus is running out of fuel. This is a resource conversation. This is not a governance conversation. At yesterday's Ways and Means hearing, we had some good testimony, but we had great questions by the representatives who were there yesterday afternoon at UMass about the relationship between resources and governance. Here to speak a little bit more about where we are financially in terms of the resources of the community colleges out here in Western Mass, Ira Rubensahl.
Good afternoon and welcome. And this is a former home for me. I used to teach and be an administrator at GCC, and I have to say the place looks fantastic. Bob, you've done a wonderful job. And I wanted to thank the legislature, because the legislature voted a bond bill a few years ago, and it was that bond bill that allowed the college to complete these wonderful renovations. Okay, I don't know if you know, but I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics and a graduate degree in physics, so I'm always the one that gets to do the numbers. So I'm going to go through some numbers with you today, and I just want to give you a perspective, a 10-year perspective of what's been going on in higher education, focusing particularly on our state universities, two of whom are represented here today, MCLA and Westfield State, and these community colleges, four of whom are represented here today. I'm going to do for primarily the statewide figures, but what's happening statewide is really reflective here in Western Mass. So enrollments. Enrollments over the last 10 years at our public state universities are up 17%, and at the community colleges statewide, 25%. So we have more students, we're educating more students. Faculty salaries are up 26%. I just went through the collective bargaining agreement, Bob. 10 years, it's only 2.6% a year. 10 years, this is a 10-year look. So we have to pay our faculty and other staff more money. Quite frankly, this was not really sufficient. We had 2 years of frozen salaries, but those are costs that the colleges have to incur, and we have to find the money to do that. And you all know who that is, right? He's a professor at Indiana University. Okay. Meanwhile, state appropriations are down 11%. In the last 10 years, we've actually had 2 recessions. We had the 2001-2003 recession that was triggered by 9/11, and we had this recent recession, the so-called Great Recession, started in 2008. And I sort of did the quick count. Of the last 10 years, we've had 5 recession years. And so our legislators have really had to struggle with balancing the budget. I think they've done a great job in doing that. But nevertheless, one of the places they cut was public higher ed. We're down 11%. This is just something for you to look at. We're all worried about affordability. We know in the private sector, universities in Massachusetts are now charging $57,000 a year to attend. And so our role in the public sector is to be affordable and to keep our doors open for those in need. Student charges are up. I mean, how can we possibly deal with inflation, deal with more students over a 10-year period, and deal with decreased state revenues? Student charges are up. They're up 168% at the state universities, and they're up 86% at the community colleges. If you're interested, this is a weighted average, so it's really the average of what students would pay. And what happened to our own college budget? So I took our own budget. I just wanted to see how much is our own budget increase. And if you look at the cartoon, it says, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2. And in step 2, it says then a miracle occurs. Our budget went from $31.4 million, there should be an M after that, to $44.6 million over this 10-year period. We're up 42%, which is not unreasonable given we're dealing with more students and our expenses went up. And we're trying to maintain quality, but it is an increase. The good news is the number of graduates is up. 21% for the community colleges and 12% for the state universities. And so graduates are tracking the increase in enrollment. Students are graduating. Now, the enrollment increase has been most dramatic in the last few years, so you'll see graduation rates continue to rise because they lag enrollment clearly. How do we do it? We did it with creativity and hard work. I have to tell you, our colleges are well run, and the caption here, Jones couldn't think outside the box. So we obviously have a lot of people thinking outside the box. And finally, we do cooperate. Bob talked about our partnerships among them between the colleges. We have partnerships with industry. We have partnerships with local school districts. We really make tremendous use of partnerships in order to make our dollars go further. And so, of course, you can see with cooperation, you can get an awful lot done, even though some of us, we're all pretty small in the world of higher ed. That's my contact information. Any questions? I hope you found this enlightening. Thank you very much.
As most of you know, this is a time of year where many seniors in the high schools of Western Mass are looking in the post office, looking at their mailboxes, looking to see if that letter came from the colleges that they've applied to. Many applications have been looked at. The admission programs at most of the colleges in Western Mass, Eastern Mass, around the country look for students who have great economic stability. They look for students who have great academic histories and great academic success. They look for students who have many role models within their families that they could turn to help navigate higher educational terrain. In short, they take about the top 5% of their graduating classes. Our community colleges admit everybody else. 95%, the other 95% come to our colleges. Our faculty and our staff meet every student at the door wherever they are, and then hold out high academic standards by the time that they leave. Our faculty and our staff see the potential of our students long before our students see it within themselves, and then together they work at achieving that potential. Here to bring the voice of those students, here to bring the voice of the students of the community colleges of Western Mass, David Morin, who's on the board at Holyoke Community College. David?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Morin, the student trustee at Holyoke Community College, and I'm just here to tell you how much I appreciate my community college education. Thank you all for being here, especially to our state legislators and our elected officials who make such a difference in our communities every day and who are constantly putting themselves on the line to defend our Western Mass institutions, whether they be our community colleges or our schools or all manner of other things. You're constantly going into the line and representing us, and I really appreciate that. What do our community colleges have to offer to our students? Well, it's a variety of things. Not only is there our great workforce development programs, but also a liberal arts education. I'm in the American Studies program at Holyoke Community College, and I don't know where I would be without it, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have the opportunity to go to a UMass or a private institution, a four-year institution, directly out of high school. I actually spent 4 years in the workforce before I realized that I had to come back to college, that I had to get an education, a higher education, if I wanted to pursue my dreams. And I value that very much, and I know that our students at HCC do as well, and that our students all around Western Mass do. So that's why I'm going to ask you to continue to represent us, to continue to defend our institutions, especially when it comes to the governor's proposal to consolidate power in the Board of Higher Education, and taking that power from Western Mass, from our local boards of trustees, especially the power to set fees for students. Nobody knows what our students' needs are better than our local trustees, better than our community college presidents, better than the students themselves who can actually go to a Board of Trustees meeting at our colleges and represent themselves, who are involved in student government like myself. So thank you so much for that. Please call the governor's office in Western Mass. Call the governor's office in Boston. To those of you who aren't state legislators, call your state legislators. Give these guys trouble. They need to hear from you every day. I'm going to make a personal effort to lead students to oppose the governor's proposal. And as much as I support the governor politically, I do not support this particular effort. On behalf of the business community, education is not about business. Education is about education. It is philosophy and political science and history. And I feel that these subject matters are going to be cut if our focus is putting people directly into the workforce. And we do put people directly into the workforce from our community colleges. We do have a great record of putting people to work, but also we need to transfer students, and we need to have that opportunity available. Why take that opportunity from us when we already have it? There are all manner of diverse students who go to our community colleges, and we need to have that pathway there for them to move on to a four-year institution. We don't need to increase the divide between those who do not have the opportunity to go directly to a four-year college and those who do have that opportunity directly out of high school. So I would just ask with you, I'd plead that you call your legislators, that you call the governor's office, send emails, write letters. I know that's slightly out of fashion these days, but I take pride in it. Write a letter to the governor's office. And again, thank you all very much for your continued support. Thank you.
When our students do show up, about half look for those programs that help them start on the journey towards the baccalaureate degree. And we've seen the data. You know the story of the amount of resources families save when they start at the community college front door and move on to UMass or any of the 5 colleges or Westfield or MCLA, any of the colleges in the Commonwealth. Enormous savings to those families. And then we have at least 50% of our student body in each of our colleges collectively. At this college, it's just under 50%, come looking for any one of those professional or career programs that are identified in meeting the needs of the local workforce, whether they be those certificate programs, those non-credit workshops, or the associate degree. The infrastructure of our communities, nurses and firefighters and police officers, the business leadership in our community, the healthcare environment, travel through the doors of our community colleges. We don't do that in isolation. We cannot do that in isolation of a collaborative effort in our communities. Government is not responsible alone for the social and economic well-being of our communities. Our colleges alone are not responsible for the social and economic well-being of our community. And the private sector alone cannot achieve those ends. But together, within our communities, collaboratively, we can achieve a better future for our communities. We know that because the people in this room are making that happen right now. Here to represent the voice of that collaboration, to talk about a particular program that exists out here in Franklin County, the leadership from Sandry Energy. Tim Van Epps, who is the CEO and president of Sandry, was 1 o'clock this morning, text and said, back is out, can't make it, but David Bean is going to be here today. Make sure that happens. Did I say David? Didn't mean to say David, I meant to say Mike. So Mike Bean is going to talk a little bit about the relationship that Sandry Energy has with GCC. As you hear that story, know that that story exists in the Berkshires, it exists in Springfield, and exists in Holyoke. So, Mike?
Sandry is a local family-owned company. We're 81 years old. We've been pretty much a classic fossil fuel oil dealer for most of those 81 years until about 3 years ago when Tim bumped into Greenfield Community College and our world got rocked at that point. Today we pride ourselves in believing that we can provide almost any form of energy to consumers, not just the classic fossil fuel. Years ago, these other forms of energy were the enemy. We saw them as competition. Today we sell wood pellets, electricity, propane, all forms of solar energy. We are all over the place. In the end, we hope to have a menu of services to provide energy of any kind to any customer. But the relationship started back in 2007 when we became a partner of the college. And we were asked to participate with the college to develop curriculum to train workers for the skills we thought we'd need as we embarked on this new energy program. That curriculum turned out to be a fantastic program. Today we have a renewables energy department of, I think there are 14 in there. It's growing all the time. They've all been exposed to courses at the college. And we wouldn't even be here today in this energy sector if it wasn't for the college. They held our hand. They're there locally when we need them. That's critical for us. We don't want to go through the capital to get to our local community college. That would be so disappointing for us. We've been able to collaborate with Bob and his staff at will whenever we want to. And so we are deeply, deeply indebted to the college to be there. We would not go forward with this renewable energy sector if they weren't here to hold our hand and to assure us that they can continue to train people and train our people, particularly when we need to have them learn, whether it's operating a forklift or installing a solar thermal system, they're there for us. And to repay our debt, we recently have decided to sponsor the Sandry Science Center at the college, and we're proud to be a participant in that. So that's a short version of what Tim was going to say. It's really condensed, and I hope that I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has. But we really think the program to stay local is vital to us, and we want to be participating as a partner. And we think that if it goes to the state offices, that won't be there for us. Thank you.
Yesterday I talked about Tom, and in testimony at Ways and Means, Tom. I won't share his last name, but Tom was out of work for a couple of years, not unlike the students that entered the doors at Berkshire and Holyoke and Stick. And Tom really became despondent. It would be the first time in a long time that he didn't have a job and he couldn't provide for his family. He went to Patricia Crosby and the people at the Regional Employment Board. Through that process, wound up here at GCC at that Sustainable Alternative Energy Program. Through those classes, he then got an internship at Sandry. When you see Tom riding around in a Sandry truck in our community, he's got a big smile on his face. Recently, he was asked, so what do you think of this project? What do you think of the effort? There was a local delegation that was interested in his input. To quote Tom, he said, "It works." It works throughout Western Massachusetts. So what I'd like to do now, before I introduce Senator Brewer to come up and say a few words, I do want to tell a little story, a true story, about centralization, as it turns out, and about this beautiful building that we have. So you heard that the bill that you passed, the capital bond bill, was out there. The process was a bit tedious, but understandable, that we want to make sure that the Commonwealth is investing in the right projects, and there was a long list. That list was to be vetted through the Board of Higher Ed. Then the Chancellor had on her desk the opportunity to weigh in and make decisions, identifying the needs of individual schools. And the truth of the matter is, in that moment, you got a lot of heavy hitters out there, all weighing in that conversation in Boston. Where is it that Berkshire Community College shows up in that chart, or Holyoke, or Stick, or GCC? Well, at that particular point, we got a call, because we kept saying, we need this, we need this, we need this. And what I'm about to say is really true. Our CFO got a call from somebody in that office and said, you better tell your president to back away. He doesn't want to be, and I'll never forget this, he doesn't want to be the butterfly that starts the tsunami. Now, that was supposed to be friend to friend, colleague to colleague. Tell your president to back away. You're going to get the 18 or whatever number million that we can afford to give you because we have these other big schools and they need to get this, this, and this. The allocation of resources was based upon those relationships that existed in Boston. And so she said, no, you can't have it. You can't have this facility for this community, for this college. We're gonna give you this amount. You should be happy about that. And, you know, we would have been. But this was what we needed for this college, for our students, for this community. And so our local delegation, with the support of the Western Mass delegation, got involved, and here you are. In this room, 70 organizations in our community, just since we cut the ribbon, I think just towards the end of spring. Cut the ribbon, started moving people in over the summer. 70 of the local organizations, nonprofits. They don't have to go all over Western Mass. They can stay in the community to have their annual meals, to have their annual presentations. And when our students have a presentation, they have a place to gather. We finally have a building that matches the quality of the experience of the relationships that have long existed here. And no one more so than Senator Brewer made that happen. So by way of introduction, Senator, let me just publicly thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those are very kind words. Before I begin, I am here for a multitude of reasons. A, because I care. B, because Regina Curtis told me to come. And also I am here on behalf of Senator Stan Rosenberg, who will be back, and he will be stronger and more effective and better than ever. You have a true friend in Western Massachusetts in Stan Rosenberg. Short story. 8 o'clock this morning, I was at the Palmer Library because we have these library breakfasts where the Board of Library Commissioners comes and tells us that they need more money for libraries, and we go. And on my way from Palmer to Greenfield, I stopped at the University of Massachusetts bookstore, and I picked up the frame for my Bachelor of Arts diploma that I have now had for 41 years, and it's in the back seat of my car. I am a product of public higher education, and it feels like Christmas. I got my frame for my diploma 41 years later. Thank you. In the dictionary, there are 1.2 million words, give or take a few. Those of us in public policy, if we are about any one word, it should be about the word opportunity. That blue-collar kids, displaced homemakers, people that can't afford a lot of other things in life can have the opportunity to excel. I sat on the lawn of GCC not too many years ago under a tent. The person sitting to my left was Bill Cosby, and the person sitting to my right was the president of Smith College. And 7 students from GCC that year matriculated from GCC to Smith College. They graduate with the Smith College degree, and they've saved their mom and dad about $200,000, quite honestly. And what we have begun here at all of our community college systems and our state university systems is this process for opportunity, and you're doing it very, very well. 48 hours ago, I was at Mount Wachusett Community College for a similar event as we have seen the culmination here. We brought out Carol Cornelson, the new DCAM commissioner, and we announced that somehow or other Mount Wachusett got put to the front of the line, and they're getting a $39 million addition for their science, technology, education, and mathematics building as well. The continued investment in our kids. Now, I saw where the governor has made some proposals. I will be very candid with you. I have served under 7 governors, and I was walking on June 2nd, the day after the tornado in Munson, alone with Governor Deval Patrick, and I said to him, and I said it then and I would say it now, finally I got a governor I really like. And I really like Deval Patrick, and I hope you do too, because he may not be exactly where you want to be on this particular issue of consolidation, and nor am I. But the overall good, and what he does not do is kick the can down the road or obfuscate, and he's trying to govern, not with an interest in being ambassador to Mexico, not with an interest in being ambassador to Canada, not with an interest in being president of the United States, all who I know of previous governors who have had that notion, quite honestly. He is trying to do a good job. What he understands, and I think our community colleges understand as well, there are 240,000 people in Massachusetts right now without a job, and there are 120,000 job opportunities in Massachusetts. And how we can dovetail the training for those jobs and working with our workforce development, working with our community colleges, working with our vocational schools to make sure that those people have those good jobs is what our goal is. That is the goal of every person in this room as well. And how we achieve that and how we get to that, quite honestly, will be part of what we do over the next 4 months of the budget. Now, the last time I saw a consolidation of Boston Power, they flooded the Quabbin Reservoir, quite honestly. So I'm a little bit reticent that what Boston knows about Berkshire Community College or Greenfield Community College, frankly, is going to be something that is applicable to the particular regions that these community colleges are located in. We are troubled by that, and we are concerned. That was abundantly clear at the Ways and Means hearing yesterday. It's abundantly clear to the members who come in to my office on budget processes, as Senator Downing, Senator Knappich, and Senator Welch have articulated to me as well. We make sure we will get it right. But folks, I will tell you, the $10 million that the governor has for an increase of the community college budget as well, a couple of things have a way of meandering on their way to June. In December, the Supreme Court of Massachusetts ruled that aliens with special status, people that are here legally, working hard, paying taxes, ought to have the same level of health care insurance that all citizens have. The Supreme Court thought it would be the same as saying everybody can have equal health care insurance in Massachusetts except those who live on Cape Cod. They were singling out, and it was not part of the equal access. And so they ruled what we call the Finch decision, and our exposure on that is about $150 million. Not quite totally anticipated for, but a dictate of the court that we will honor. The governor's budget proposes $266 million in new taxes, unclaimed bottle deposits, candy bars, potato chips, and tobacco taxes. Under our Constitution in Massachusetts, and frankly, history lesson, under the Constitution in Washington, D.C., tax revenue increases have to be proposed by the House of Representatives, both in Boston and in Washington. Our Speaker, my friend, who's a very good man who I take at his word, gave a State of the State speech to his members in the House and said that taxes will not be on the table. So we will govern accordingly. So we will govern without that $266 million or that vicinity of. In addition, so you have $150 million on the Finch decision, $266 million on foregone revenue. That is not really part of what the final equation will be for the budget. So choices will have to indeed be made. There are over 800 line items in the budget, and whether it's going to the library breakfast or hospital health care funding for displaced people programs, you name the program. Quite honestly, those are the challenges that Massachusetts is facing in its upcoming budget. The uncertainties in a global economy of $5 a gallon for gasoline. If Israel and Iran get into a shooting war, or if the European markets and the Greek bailout doesn't work, all of those effects happen back on Main Street within hours, not months or years. This isn't like the War of 1812 when Andrew Jackson beat the British and the war had already been over for 6 weeks, but they didn't hear about it. This is an immediacy to this world economy that we live in. So there is an uncertain economy. But a note of measure of sobriety and determination of this legislature, one that I'm enormously proud of, that we went before Fitch's and Moody's and Standard & Poor's. It was like studying for your oral comprehensives for your master's degree. Chairman Dempsey and myself, the House Chairman of Ways and Means, went and we made the pitch for Massachusetts. 3 individual rooms where they didn't talk to each other. 1 hour, 1 hour, and 1 hour. And shortly thereafter, very shortly thereafter, they determined that Massachusetts would receive an upgrade in their bond rating to AA+, The highest bond rating in the history of Massachusetts, at a time when when the United States bond rating was being downgraded, or what you see in the European Unions in their bond rating, because we have governed the way that we ought to govern. Republicans and Democrats working together. How I wish they would do that in Washington. How I wish they would do that in Washington. And I didn't even speak of the uncertainties of community development block grants from Washington, transportation infrastructure, housing, all of those things, veterans benefits. All of those are very uncertain funding sources from Washington to not to have expectations of their opulence up here, quite honestly. But yet we have governed and improved our bond rating and done the people's business, quite honestly. And again, I assure you that we will. And at the end of this, the House does the budget in April, and the Senate does it in May. And then 6 people sit at a table and reconcile about 1,100 items. 6 chairs in this empty table right here. I just asked for the hands of 3 of the 6 people that will be at that table. Stephen Kulig, hand. Michael Knappich, hand. And Stephen Brewer, hand. 3 out of the 6 people at that table are in this room today. So your voice is heard, and we will do the best. Some change will be coming, folks, and we ought to get used to it. And we can be, because you are public higher education, and I believe that we will achieve the goals that we want. Affordable opportunity for our young people and for those people that are displaced homemakers as well. About 15 years ago, I got invited to Mount Wachusett graduation. I hadn't been to a college graduation since my own. I crawled on my hands and knees in the attic crawl space looking for my cap and gown. I brought it downstairs, and my wife looked at it, and she says, "I'm not ironing it." I got the ironing board out, and I ironed it. There wasn't 1/4 inch of that gown that wasn't wrinkled, I'll tell you. It was disaster. And I got it looking really good, drove to Gardner. I got there, and little I find out that all these other cap and gowns are hanging right there that you could take off the hooks to wear them when you go. On that day, I saw ventilator-dependent people being wheeled up to the president's table to get their diploma, or 30-year-old or 40-year-old or 50-year-old moms and grandmoms. Maybe somebody would hold the baby while they would go get their community college degree. And I left there inspired. I left there inspired because I know what it costs to go to American University in Washington, where my daughter went, which is now over $50,000 a year, or at McGill up in Montreal, where my youngest daughter is, which is almost $50,000 a year. I have taken a legitimate vow of poverty, quite honestly. And I know that you can get a superb education in our Massachusetts college system. When I left the bookstore today, going to my car, this weekend is a young student's chance to visit the university, school vacation week. And I saw a mom and dad with their senior in high school walking through. And I introduced myself to them, and I had my bag with my 41-year-old diploma frame. And I said, "I'm Senator Steve Brewer, and I went here 41 years ago, and I'm damn proud of it, and I'm damn proud of it then, and I'm damn proud of it now." Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Senator. We've left time for conversation, and I'm going to turn to the legislative body, the delegates of Western Mass. If you have comments, we'll go there first, and then open it up to conversation, questions, and answers if you'll be so kind to take those. So, would any of the representatives like to take the podium first? Representative Kulik.
Basis. I wanted to just say a few words about the hearing we had yesterday when Bob Pura so eloquently testified. The Ways and Means Committee has a series of 7 or 8 budget hearings on different aspects of the governor's budget proposal. And yesterday we did education and local aid. We held it at UMass Amherst for the 3rd year in a row, which is a great location to have it. And so for 3.5 hours, the Ways and Means Committee heard from the Executive Office of Education and the 3 commissioners of education, early, secondary, and higher. And my colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee, Smitty Pignatelli and Ben Downing, were there. And it was a very illuminating 3.5 hours. That was before we got to the various advocates and people representing higher ed like Bob Pura who testified. And the majority of those 3.5 hours, I'd say, were taken up with the community college reorganization issue. And it really wasn't by design of those of us on the committee. It just happened very naturally. And Undersecretary Weber, who was there on behalf of Secretary Revel, who couldn't be with us, and Commissioner Freeland, really did most of the talking and explaining and answering of questions from members of the Ways and Means Committee. And I have to say, as Senator Brewer said, we enter this with a lot of skepticism. But as one legislator leaving that hearing yesterday and having an opportunity to drill down into the proposal, I come away feeling, what in the world is this for? I do understand some of the challenges that the administration faces and their very noble desire to utilize community colleges to improve the employment climate in Massachusetts. That's fine. It's happening now, and it's happening successfully at every one of your colleges. So take those best practices, improve upon them. But as was said at the hearing yesterday, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't fix what isn't broken. So we understand, I think, a need for some communications improvements, some coordination improvements, but the types of very significant change that are proposed in the governor's budget, I have to say, did not find sympathetic ears at the hearing yesterday. Would my colleagues agree who were there? We asked some great questions. We're going to continue to ask tough questions of the administration as we continue through on this budget process, because when you make proposals such as are in this budget, which are so significant and such a, what I would call a radical change, there has to be a lot of meat on that bone. There has to be great justification for making those changes, because the way they are right now, I think they would really jeopardize the good work that you all do on a regular basis. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that hearing and the sort of reaction I think that was on the committee. And I also want to say that I go to a lot of legislative breakfasts and lunches. I think we all do. And the attendance at this one is really phenomenal of legislators. And I think it speaks to the good communications and relationships that each of you at your colleges have built up over the years. We want to be here. We want to work with you. And throughout this budget process, please do continue to stay in touch with us. Thanks very much.
I just thought the legislators ought to know, maybe you know this already, that the opening salvo for this very bad idea from a very good governor, in my opinion, came from the Boston Foundation, from a study that they did of community colleges. And you should know that there may have been one community college that their researchers visited in Western Massachusetts. They certainly didn't come here, and I don't think they came to most of them. I wrote to a friend on the Boston Foundation about this, and he acknowledged the problem and said it would be rectified. Of course, it has not been. So if you need any ammunition of that sort, that report really does stop short of Worcester.
The governor's chief of staff was in my office meeting on another issue, and he noticed among the many messy piles on my desk that Boston Foundation report and annotated. And before I could get a word out of my mouth about the issue I asked him to come in and talk about, he grabbed it off my desk, pointed to it, and said, "We don't want to do this." So they're incredibly, I think they understand what that looks like, and I think that it highlights to us what this could be. And I think Bob said it best at the Ways and Means hearing yesterday when he highlighted the fact that under previous administrations, there had been proposals to consolidate or merge the campuses themselves out here in Western Mass, and that with a system like that, a proposal such as that would be far easier to do. And especially no matter how much you trust the current administration, we need to make the right policy decision for any administration moving forward. And I think that we talk about this like it's a challenge. It is. I also think it's a great opportunity. The governor has put community colleges and public higher ed in the forefront when it comes to economic development, and they absolutely are. And I think it should be the first sort of cornerstone for us making the case for increased funding moving forward. So yeah, let's worry about the proposal, but let's also use it for the positive that it is to really raise the profiles about all the good work that you are doing already. So just my 2 cents there.
Thank you for coming. I'm faculty here in the education department, and I just want to put a little thought in, if you haven't come to this one yet, the importance of the liberal arts even to the workforce. I work with education folks. Half of them are young people going on to a 4-year, maybe UMass, maybe Smith, to be our kindergarten and up teachers. The other half are the people who take care of our tiniest, the infants and toddlers in their own homes, at each other's homes, at small centers. The richness of having a history class, a philosophy class, is as important to the teacher who cares for the 6-week-old baby as it is for the 4th grade teacher. And when I hear workforce thrown around and around and around, I just want you to remember that a well-educated workforce means they've had history and philosophy and other things, and not just how to screw the screw in.
I'm Ken Haar from Westfield State University. I've spoken to most of the legislators who are in this room today about some of the things I want to mention to you. But as you deliberate the budget this year, there are a couple of things that are particularly important, I think. One of the difficulties with public higher education in terms of how budgets are formed is that when A&F puts together a budget, they look at us as being very much separate from the rest of the state agencies because we have our control over our own budgets. Essentially, we're line items and that's it. And so that creates a little bit of trepidation on their parts, I think, when it comes to funding public higher education. And so we're hoping that you guys could look past that when you put together a budget and focus on some of the things that are critical needs to public higher ed. For one, financial aid for our students. As we are forced, because of the budget cuts that we've had to endure, to raise our tuition and fees on our students, we are essentially locking out a portion of our population from that opportunity that has been so eloquently spoken of here today. And that's especially true at the University of Massachusetts, and it's especially true at the state universities. The community colleges have valiantly been able to keep their costs fairly affordable, but there's still a chunk of our population that cannot afford to go, and there's a portion of our population who go much longer than they have to, who pay a lot more than they should because of the economic hardships that they have to go through. So think about financial aid. Think about deferred maintenance on the enormous property that these campuses represent. DCAM has in their budget, I think, about $30 million a year for deferred maintenance projects for every building that the state owns or leases. And public higher education has an unmet deferred maintenance need of about $4.5 billion now. There should be a regular amount of money spent every year on those deferred maintenance projects. PHENOM, the Public Higher Education Network of Massachusetts, has recommended that we try to put in about $50 million a year towards that. And I think that would be an effective start on trying to keep up with deferred maintenance. It's not anywhere near what I believe DCAM would like to see for deferred maintenance, but it may provide jobs in the community. Certainly all these are capital projects that are going to hire people and have some economic benefit. The third thing is to pay the contracts that are negotiated with the employees who work for these institutions. Those are deals that the governor and the Department of Higher Education have signed off on, and essentially the costs have been borne by the campuses this past year for the first time in my history with public higher ed, which goes back to 1982. That's really unfortunate because those costs also are ladled onto our students essentially as a tax. And so we've managed to tax our students to the tune of about $75 million this year to make up for the cuts in appropriations. That's unfair, and we're not able to keep up with that with the with the financial aid that we do provide. So those three things would be very important. I also want to remind everybody here in the room, March 8th is going to be a public higher ed lobby day at the State House. I urge all of you to make individual appointments, if you could, to come that day at 11 o'clock in Gardner Auditorium. For the first time in history, all three segments of the system will be showing up together. Students, faculty, staff, administrations will all be there to talk to our legislators individually. There's a sign-up on Phenom, registration for that lobby day on Phenom's website, phenomonline.org. You can go there and register to do that lobbying. I urge you all to come and talk individually with your legislators at that time. And all those of you who are in the legislature, I urge you to be there to listen. Thank you.
Tim?
Yeah,
and then Tim.
Very quickly, I just want to thank all the members of our regional delegation for the wonderful job you do in terms of supporting public higher ed. I've worked in a couple other states with a couple other state legislators. Nobody compares, particularly with this regional delegation. You work as a unit, you work across party lines, and you represent us enormously well. I'm particularly close with our twin Mike Kays down in Holyoke. I'm told one of them's a Republican and one of them's a Democrat. But I tell you, in terms of how they support Holyoke Community College, you can't tell who's who. Politics doesn't enter into it. The delegation does a damn fine job of supporting public higher ed and the region as a whole, and I thank you all.
Bob never likes when I take the microphones. I usually embarrass the college, and I'm not going to speak for the our entire board at GCC, but you can pass along to the governor, as far as I'm concerned, as a college trustee, part of his proposal with the $10 million increase to community college budgets as a trade-off or a carrot for eliminating local boards of trustees. I can help Senator Brewer out in Ways and Means, keep the $10 million, and we'll keep our boards. That makes more sense, and it pays dividends way above $10 million. So there's a little help for the Senate, the House, and the governor. We'll stay here as our board of trustees and put the $10 million to local aid. All right, that's me as a town councilor.
I know that I'm speaking on behalf of all the presidents, all of the leadership teams, and all of the faculty, and especially so the students of our colleges here in Western Mass, to say to the members of our boards of the foundations, of our boards of trustees, and to our elected officials, thank you very much.